Welcome to Let's Take a Moment for Youth. This podcast is brought to you by our Wheelock College of Education and Human Development Center for Future Readiness at Boston University. My name is Scott Solberg, and I'm joined today by...
It says any on the thing.
Oh, it says Trey on mine. Can we start over? Who's going to go first?
Well, why don't we just take it from there, Annie? We're practicing. We'll get there. Ready? Okay. My name is Scott Solberg, and I'm joined today by...
Annie Bell.
And Shrey Venkatesan.
Wow, we are a tight ship, aren't we? Okay.
Yes,
The
we
Take,
are.
the Take a Moment series is designed to explore innovations that create opportunities for all children and youth to develop their full potential. Our podcast is designed for those of you interested in or currently working in schools, community-based organizations, or concerned families and caregivers seeking new ideas and resources. Okay, Annie, tell us about today's topic.
Okay.
Oh, do you have Shrey
So-
going that? You changed it, didn't you? Okay, Shrey,
No,
why don't
I
you tell
didn't
us? Oh, you
change
did.
it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you did. Okay, good.
So, as part of November's Global Careers Month, we're focusing on international applications of career development programs and services. Last session, we discussed the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's PISA report, showing the need to continue efforts to increase access to career development. And today, we wanted to talk about design considerations when serving youth in lower and middle income countries. Specifically, how can we design quality career development systems in these settings that are culturally grounded, affordable, and responsive to local needs?
That's great. Yeah. Yeah, I think and I think even any low income setting, I think this is what we're applying to. And I think this is why I like the international work is we can begin to see what might be happening in another country
Right.
that's really successful, and we can wonder, well, what could that look like in our own settings, right? Is important, but also we really want to get at the indigenous practices that are also rich
Yeah.
and culturally supportive, right? And sometimes a lot of our career development work is just not engaged in that indigenous, those indigenous resources and
Right.
beliefs, the cultural beliefs that are so critical. So we really want to continue moving and being responsive to that as well. Shrey, what do you think about tell us about first? Let's start. I know last time the OECD report was not a happy thought because it's like we're not getting things. And we're going to start off without a happy thought, with another unhappy thought. So
Yep.
tell us a little bit about what's going on in the world of work for youth.
So we have a youth employment crisis. The International Labor Organization is a very strong advocate for keeping our attention on helping all youth and adults find access to decent work, which is a UN Sustainable Development Goal number 8. So our Wheelock Center for Future Readiness, we're especially interested in Goal 8.6, which is promote youth access to employment, education, and training.
So yeah, what's the context here? Why is this such a critical issue?
Because 1 in 4 youth worldwide are considered NEET. That is, they are not in education, employment, or training.
Wow.
That's because there's the difference between youth unemployment and then youth underemployment, right? Because over or around 75% of youth in low-income countries work informally. So for example, I had friends in school who were working at a stationery store or things like that did not go on their resume or anything, or they weren't legally employed because they were children, but it was still something that they were doing informally, right? Just to earn money and just to support themselves and their families.
Yeah.
And this also comes down to the fact that there are so many gender disparities with the kind of work that they get to do.
Right.
So when I talk about friends working in stationery stores, that were primarily men, right? And then I also had friends who were working with their families on food stalls and things like that were mostly women. So there are a lot of gender disparities when it comes to youth.
Access.
Yeah, access, right? And the kind of work that they're able to do, even informally, let alone formally.
Yeah. Wow. So that's very interesting. And the gender disparities aren't just in terms of work; it's also education access
Right.
too that we have to be looking at. Yeah.
Yeah. And for example, in I'm from India, and there we have still cases of where people or women are not allowed to go to schools, or like they're not allowed to work anymore. And that was like kind of the story of my mom, and she wasn't just allowed to work after marriage and things like that. It's just the gender disparities carried throughout, not just in education. It's throughout, and you can see how it is reflected even in their adulthood.
Yeah, yeah, wow, that's amazing. And certainly we have issues that are like this around the world, obviously, and
Right.
even in the United States, where we're calling from, there's still a lot of gender discrepancies in terms
Right.
of pay, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of getting access to certain opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Annie, what about the rural part? It becomes really big too, and I guess you have a story that could provide us some sense of hope.
I think so. I think so. So out of Rwanda, there was a man by the name of John Bosco Nzimana, and he, as a student, collected firewood, which interfered with his schooling. And as a university student, he founded a business called Habana or Harana Limited to turn waste into clean energy. So briquettes, um, collected waste, and then it turns into fire starters, etc. And his business now employs dozens of employees and serves more than 1,500 households. And over, I would say, the last more than 10 years, they have received national awards and international recognition for their work. I just think that his story is a great example of how youth innovation stemming from a lived experience, as opposed to imported models, can become a solution to a community challenge, as well as a pathway to careers and creation for other people that end up working for that business. So it's a great example of community-based career development, I think, long before any formal systems are designed or implemented. And I know, Scott, you're sort of our resident expert. From your perspective, how do stories like Bosco's show us what's possible when youth have a sense of agency and notice challenges,
Hmm.
that become a starting point for businesses and entrepreneurship?
Well, I think one of the things I found over trying to do training and teaching and encouraging schools and organizations to adopt some of these career development policies is that a lot of times it's not a financial issue that gets in the way, it's an imagination
Mm-hmm.
problem, right? And so we
Mm,
can't imagine that someone from Rwanda who's living in a rural setting with such a low income setting that people are collecting firewood every day as they go to making them late to school,
Mm-hmm.
how that person or someone in that setting can be transformed in a way that now they're running a business
Yeah.
that's solving one of these sustainable development challenges, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're talking about if we can see what's happening for that one individual, we can begin to
mm-hmm.
imagine, well, what would it take to create the conditions for other youth to start thinking in those ways as well, right?
Yeah.
And think about how amazing it must be to do something that not only improves your local community, but
Mm-hmm.
is employing your local community, right?
Right.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's just a ginormous game changer. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do think that it's important because we need our philanthropic community to invest in these things, right? And
Yeah.
they've done some great things with micro loans in different areas and different models and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to start with imagination. How do we help youth identify the challenges in that local community and begin thinking about the solution strategies that they might be able to bring to it, right?
Right.
So we can, if we had a John Bosco in every community,
Mm-hmm.
how does that change our sense of purpose, hope, the sense of the quality of our lives, right?
Yeah.
When things like this happen. So it doesn't take 10 John Boscos in this community. We just need one. We just need one.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about how many millions of youth are right now out of work and are as you said, underemployed, unemployed,
Yeah.
searching for something,
Mm-hmm.
out of that, if we even took 1% of them, the
Mm-hmm.
talent that's there to help transformative change, that's the imagination we need. And so these stories, like with John Bosco, are such a critical thing. We can't, we need them. We need more of them, and we need to share
Right.
them widely. So
Mm-hmm.
this one's been well reported in the press for many years, and I'm just
Mm-hmm.
excited to have come across it as well. Yeah. So, I think I'm up again.
Mm-hmm.
So we do want to, one of the things we talk about is really looking at some of these indigenous practices, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the things I've learned about for another presentation we just gave recently at the ICTE conference, which we'll get a link to. It should have been recorded. but it was really talking about some of these indigenous practices along the African continent that I found. And one of them were these idea of age grade groups. Igbo is one area, but that's in many parts of Africa. It's been practiced since before the colonial times and still continuing today, where 2 or 3 grade levels of youth are brought together and organized as a community resource. I don't have all the details of everything they do, but from what I'm reading, it sounds very exciting, because what I'm hearing is there's an agricultural component to the work they're doing to support. There's community needs that they're going to be responsive to, but they're also transmitting the cultural values. They're maintaining the sense of who we are as a culture,
Right.
and they're also engaging in civic engagement, how we can create some solutions. I think it's a fantastic way of helping, create the community a sense of peer belonging, local governance, helping them see that they can have some influence over their community and things like that. But you're also teaching civic responsibility, right, as well as leadership. So this centuries-old workforce development model, I think, is something we need to really champion as a very effective structure.
Yeah.
And what we want to talk about now is some ways in which we might be able to really make it even more powerful, if you will, by coming up with tangible skills as well as opportunities to apply those skills.
Yeah.
So Shrey, what did we got for you? What are you going to tell us about on that?
So I'm going to talk about the 4-H model in the African continent, which is a scalable, positive youth development framework, right? So it was introduced in Africa since like 1962, and it was introduced to help rural youth develop practical skills. So this includes countries, I think, with active programs like Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, and more. So Kenya has the largest hub, though, with over 181,000 members.
Wow.
That's huge. That's a huge number. And it's all about teaching, I guess, like you said earlier, I guess adapting indigenous practices to your youth work development, right? So in Africa, it's about like teaching modern farming techniques, livestock management, and crop production, things like that. And this includes youth-led enterprise gardens, leadership institutes, agricultural innovation, and yeah. So, Scott, weren't you in 4-H?
I was in 4-H, yes. So 4-H began in the United States, and I always get nervous when we export things, but what I found is that the way in which it's been introduced in Africa, and in many parts of Africa it's referred to as 4K,
Right.
that they basically did make it more of an indigenous process, right? And like you said, it was, there's some agricultural needs,
Yeah.
and we're focusing on sustainability right now, right? It's such
Right.
a hot topic and important topic for all of us, and these were tangible skills to support that. And so I think it is interesting in there. In my own experience, I was in a rural area in California, up in the mountains, and it was very similar to what the age grade Igbo kind of model is
Yeah.
for these age grade practices. And we were, at one point I was the president, and I'm leading the meetings, and we're defining the things we're going to do. We're setting our priorities.
Yeah.
We were doing community-based supports, so we actually refurbished one of our elderly homes, one of their entry areas, and got some recognition for that. And it gave you a sense that I have the ability to have an impact,
Right.
right? And everything that I learned in 4-H, in addition to raising pigs, and in addition to beekeeping, and in addition to farming, leathercraft, photography, lots of really tangible skills, right?
Yeah.
Also creativity. I went to a whole
Right.
week-long training on just being creative and just allowing that to happen, right? All of that has shaped who I am.
Yeah.
The ability to get up in front of a meeting and give a talk and all of that all came from 4-H. And so these are tangible skills, right? And we think of these as kind of the technical skills we need
Yeah.
that are going to be transcendent. They're so transferable. But they also taught me a lot of those human skills too, which
Right.
we also want, right?
Yeah.
The communicating, getting together with others, being responsive to the community needs and things like that. So I'm a big fan of the process of it.
Yeah.
It's a positive youth development model, which means that we're optimizing youth development. We're not putting them in a one-size-fits-all. They're selecting into the activities they want to do.
Right.
And they're getting recognition as they move along that developmental line. So so I'm wondering, now we talked earlier about this, so maybe you could share nothing like this in India from your perspective on that.
No, yeah, we don't really have like, as far as I know, community-led youth development models, right? So we have like when you think about extracurriculars or learning outside of the classroom, it's all about just parents enrolling you into extracurricular activities, but there is nothing that is community led, that is focused on practices that have been in India for a while. Like, I haven't heard of anything, for example, what we're talking about in 4 H in Africa, it's not, I haven't heard of anything that would I guess, do farming models and things like that because farming is really popular in India. And yeah, we
It's
have a
very
whole
important.
festival around it.
Hmm.
Things like that. I've never heard of anything like
Yeah.
that. And I wish there was something like that because, like you said, it's not only about investing in youth skills, it's also helping them recognize that, hey, I can have an impact in this community.
Hmm.
In the community that I grew up in, I can give back.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
That's great. And if
Yeah.
we have any listeners that are in some of these countries, in India, since we're talking about that now, that are aware of these, please let us know. I mean, we do want
Yeah.
to learn, and we're not saying that we're experts on all of the
Mm-hmm.
things happening. We're intrigued by and interested in learning so much more about what's happening. So if you've got some ideas or some things you've seen, send them our way, and we'll add it to our list of resources. So,
Yep.
Mhm.
so Annie, what about on your end? What was it? What was it like down in your neck of the woods growing up?
Well, I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., and
In the
I was sort of
woods? Yeah, there were woods involved.
well, there were woods, yes. Um, the Blue Ridge and outside DC. And I, I mean, there were so many kids in the Blue Ridge who grew up on farmland and, rural mountain roads. And um, I would say I sort of developed some skills alongside them, just sort of spending time with them as friends.
Hmm.
But in, the DC suburbs, I think, as memory serves, the more popular options were, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. Some people started, in daisies and went all the way up through high school.
Hmm.
And then I would say community and like religious ministry organizations
Hmm.
like Young Life.
Sure.
That was a really popular one
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
with friends of mine. And I I never made it past daisies, so that wasn't really my thing at that age.
I see.
But
Uh-huh. So that was like you were how old there? About 8 or 9?
I think I was 6 or 7.
6 or 7,
Mm.
and you
Yep.
ended your first career pathway is what you're saying at 7.
Yes, I
Okay.
did.
Okay.
I did. But by middle school, I think it was around 13,
Hmm.
I started volunteering at our local county summer camps.
Hmm.
So the Parks and Rec department had, I feel like hundreds, probably wasn't that many, summer camps every summer. And as long as you were, well, 13 or 2 years older than the oldest camper,
Mm.
most of them ending at the age of 11, you could be a volunteer. And so I started that very first summer,
Mm-hmm.
13 years old. These were camps that I had attended every summer since I was a
Hmm.
kid. Um, and I was a volunteer every summer until I was 18.
Wow.
And then I transitioned to a paid staff role, and it was amazing. I got to see the same kids grow up. I got to see their siblings come through the programs. Staff members who were my camp directors, moved on to different roles within the
Hmm.
programs. Skill development, at 13, you had to have a resume and an interview with a director, and
Hmm.
it was all very official. And I would say that was the biggest, career pathway, workforce development experience that I had
Hmm.
Mm.
throughout, all of my schooling, to
Yeah.
the point where my senior experience was developing curriculum,
Hmm. Hmm.
activities for one of the programs. So I think yeah, that was probably the most sort of formative experience that I had career-wise.
Yeah, and I would say it's probably shaped a lot of your ideas about what you're doing now, even.
Oh, for sure.
Mm.
For sure.
Hmm.
Um, it, oh my gosh, in so many ways. No, and I think also looking back on that time, I
Hmm.
look back on it really fondly, both as a camper and as a volunteer and a staff member.
Sure.
I think,
Sure. And I think what's interesting about your experience is you were doing it from 11 to 18, which you know, in your lifespan, that's a significant period of time,
Yeah.
up to 18, right? I mean, that's a huge amount of investment.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming then that it gave you a feel for how you enjoy being in the world in a sense, right? I mean, you're in a work setting, and there's a comfort, there's a sense of the adults in terms of how they're responding to you, and it's just
Right.
those kinds of opportunities is what we talk about in terms of being in those caring, encouraging settings and the impact
Yeah.
you can have. And it almost sets up a kind of a script for how you want to be going forward in the world, not only as your own leader and as a as you're supervising now others, but also just how you want to be treated, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
really important stuff we're talking about.
Well, I think there were sort of a few things that I see now as things that I enjoy, about the work and the work environment that I'm in now is as a volunteer, they wanted to hear your ideas, and they wanted you to lead the activities that played to your strengths, but they would also push you to do other things even if it wasn't your strength. So I led a lot of art activities, but there were days where I also led athletic activities.
Yes. Yes.
And the arts were more my strength, but the athletics were also fun. It was also a position where you were directly in the community, so you got to know the parents and the caregivers and the kids and their siblings.
And that sense of
And
connection, you can't.
it was such a sense of connection. Yeah. And I mean, there are kids who I still see, around the county, and it's so nice to see how they're doing. And it's also a sense of purpose, and everybody from, the department where you rent the play equipment from to the people in the building with you every single day. Everybody's working towards making it a happy, safe experience.
Right. Right.
And that sort of unified purpose, I think, was also really sort of comforting. Everybody was on the same team, sort of thing. So yeah, it was great. It was
And
really great.
I think as we try to think about an ecosystem level intervention, right? How do we design this community ecosystem to optimize youth development? The quality of the setting is important, and I think that
Yes.
as I reflect on your story, one of the things that's missing from that, and also missing, I think, from the 4-H to a certain extent, and I'll tell you, I have met with the 4-H leadership, and they're very excited about the career development work we do because they see that as a way of helping, like in your case, and it would have been a way to make sure you're understanding what skills you've developed during this period, right? And kind
Yeah.
of giving you a chance to explore the other opportunities you might have based on those interests and skills. And we don't do enough of that. It's like, okay, well, I don't think about my ability to lead a group or to be given a task that I have to get ready for in 3 days,
Right.
and that the organization and the creativity and all that. We don't think of that as something that's important or a skill, right? And so we do need a system that can help us quantify and qualify the kinds of skill sets, interests, values, and these emergence of how I like feeling about myself and things in a way that can be done into a resume, in a way that I can then see it as a personal branding, right? How often are we like, I don't know who I am? Well, we need to be thinking in those terms.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that we wanted to really point out in today's piece is that when you think of these age grade practices like we have in Nigeria, we're talking about, where we bring the groups together, like in a 4-H type system, where we can now give them quantifiable skill sets, we still need one more element to that, and that's where the career development comes in. That's where we start, and we use the word career, but it's really about future and thinking about my future opportunities. And we need to be able to help youth really see the skills they have, recognize their values, but then have a way for them to explore how those skills transfer into other opportunities.
Yeah.
And that becomes the big piece, where I could see this if we were designing something like this, right, we would want those youth to come in and have empowerment. We want them to be doing civic engagement where they're looking at the sustainable challenges in their community. We want to have some way of giving them badges or some kind of qualifying the skills that they're developing like they're doing in 4-H.
Yeah.
And then we want a conversation with them, with other adults, with other employers, and with other education pathways, so they can begin seeing the transferability and their potential as they continue developing. To me, that not only builds a stronger community, but it helps youth find purpose and a sense of hope, which is what's missing right now for so many of them.
Definitely.
Any other thoughts on that? Oh, and entrepreneurship. So I think what we just got out of John Bosco's story, right, is this
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial sense. And how can we help youth in all of this build an entrepreneurial attitude,
Mm-hmm.
seeing themselves as developing skills that have value
Right.
and identifying the problems in their community that need to get solved.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can begin
Mm-hmm.
thinking about how they can go about doing that. And in John Bosco's case was around waste management. We, as you were mentioning, Shrey, in India, so much around agriculture and starting to look at new innovative ways
Yep.
to work with the land, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have green economy jobs we're talking about, things like that. So these micro enterprises helping our youth start to build an entrepreneurial plan.
Mm-hmm.
I was amazed in Singapore to see not only in the high schools, but in the 2-year and the 4-year colleges, all kinds of how to help you be an entrepreneur. Come in
Yeah.
with your idea and we're going to help you build it. We're going to create maker spaces where you just have open reign to create anything you want to build in this space. Really building out that sense of creativity and entrepreneurial attitude about things is really such a critical piece.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Now, Andy, you want to talk a little about the access and gender equity issues again? I know we talked a little bit about
I
that
do.
before, but that's still, it's just something we never want to walk away from because it's such a critical issue.
Absolutely.
For sure.
I think this is probably a I think this is an issue I come back to personally a lot in other conversations that we have at work. Um, but another priority is access, gender equity, and addressing other barriers. And one of those that is near and dear to my heart is transportation.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
It's so, great to have these programs, and the youth need to be able to get there, or you need to be able to take the program to them.
yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
there are so many nonprofits and there's so many youth organizations in these urban hubs
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
or suburban hubs. And then sort of like, what do you do when you have students living on dirt roads, and driving 45 minutes to school, etc., or even longer, in some instances. So I think transportation as like a very physical form of access
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
something that we don't want to lose sight of.
No,
Um,
let's sit on that for just a second because I agree.
yeah,
And it's also for our students with disabilities. If we're going to help
Right.
support them in getting
absolutely.
access
Mm-hmm.
to some of their
Hmm.
work-based learning opportunities, whether rural or in an urban type setting,
Yeah.
transportation's huge. I know it was really exciting to
Hmm.
see in Madison, Wisconsin, how the taxi drivers, the Uber drivers, were getting specialized training so
Mm-hmm.
they could
Hmm.
escort and support students with disabilities, and
Yeah.
oftentimes with the emotional disabilities as well. And it
Hmm.
was just great to see that there was a way to provide kind of a certifying body that we could trust then
Right.
to take care of our
Hmm.
youth in those spaces. But yeah, it's a big issue. I also think that, and I'm just going to call out my colleges and universities and some of our federal funds in the
Mm-hmm.
United States, but so often there are programs that happen on a college campus, and so we want to provide support, say, for math instruction or science, and we're going to work
Hmm.
with high school and middle school youth, but they have to get to the college
Yeah.
in
Yep.
order to have access to it, right? And I've always been frustrated with that. So as you know, we
Mm-hmm.
work with Sociedad Latina, we worked with our West End House, our other community,
Hmm.
organizations, and the reason why we want to work in supporting them is we don't want the youth to have to go somewhere else,
Right.
right? We want to
Hmm.
work and collaborate with them in their context, and especially
Yeah.
because there's so much more we can learn about how to do this work well when we work with organizations
Hmm.
that are experts in their communities and within their
Mm-hmm.
own indigenous practices, we can call it, but just the cultural practices of what's happening. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Another sort of factor in access is childcare, if needed.
Yes.
I think
Mm-hmm.
that's probably a longer conversation as well, but teen parents who are trying to get to school, get to workforce development programs,
Yep.
they need
Mm-hmm.
childcare. There's also um, students who care for younger siblings while
Mm-hmm.
parents work.
Mm-hmm.
They need childcare support as well. And then generally, I think the emphasis of safety
Mm-hmm.
in these
Mm-hmm.
programs is really important. And then also um, sort of like work-based learning or workforce development programs, if they're in a workplace, their workplace safety as young adults and teenagers is very,
Yes,
very important.
absolutely.
Mm.
And sort of to your point, Scott, about going to these nonprofit partners, navigating, the culture of that nonprofit, you know,
Mm-hmm.
is I think sometimes way more beneficial for the youth involved than bringing them to a different setting.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, internationally, navigating cultural expectations is really important
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Shrey, your experience in India was very, very different from mine
Mm-hmm.
here in the United States, and that's not rare, and even state to state or, district to district, the sort of cultural expectations can be different for
Yeah.
youth.
But
And
also,
this,
but also
hmm
solving the local community challenges has a
hmm
lot to do with understanding and embedding it within the cultural
Mm.
milieu, right? And so I just want to call out
hmm
Sociedad Latina again. We got to go to their open house and got to
hmm
see the civic engagement efforts students are doing in mapping
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
parts of their community around food and around other kinds of public health needs, right? And
hmm
and then learning about how they gathered the data on the impact that cell
hmm
phones were having on mental health for youth,
Right.
and were able to actually go. The youth were able to go and legislate to the elected officials in the schools, the school board, to get some policies changed. I mean, it's
Yes.
amazing to think about how now, as a
Mhm.
university, I'm not thinking in those ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to
Right.
be embedding and working with our local leaders in our communities to really,
hmm
bring the resources we can bring from a university. We can help with evaluation. We can help with, creating, models that are scalable and all of those things. But we've got to really learn from our community of leaders who really understand the
Mm-hmm.
needs of their youth and really can connect with them in ways that otherwise no one has the skill sets that they do in that space.
hmm One final thing would be the digital divides.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was so much conversation about this during COVID when schools had to
Yes.
go online and
Mm-hmm.
students didn't have reliable home internet or the computers or whatnot. And I think that the digital divide is not something that's gone away.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just shifted again. And I'm speaking from a US context. I'm sure it's very, very different country and city,
Yeah.
you know, internationally. So I think that range of digital access is so vital.
Mm.
And, we can talk about workplace experiences that are
Mm-hmm.
held virtually, and we also want to make sure that they're accessible to the broadest range of students possible.
Yep.
Yep.
Um, and I guess this sort of goes to the some of the other points is when developing programming and working towards implementing it, there is a necessary level of awareness, of
Mm-hmm.
circumstances, of priorities, of touch points where more access or more sort of accommodation is needed
Mm-hmm.
so that it's
Mm-hmm.
such a high quality program. Um, and so I think that that's just sort of a caveat, a note to kind of keep in mind across the board
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
is that awareness of circumstances as we move towards programming is
Mm-hmm.
so, so important, and that never really goes away either.
Yeah, and I think it is becoming aware of the fact that when we come from different contexts,
Mm-hmm.
we make assumptions, and certainly
Yep.
coming from what gets called westernized or north versus global south, right? The global
Yeah.
north and the kind of
Mm-hmm.
the piece. We certain assumptions we make, and we have to become aware of those. We have to call those out. You
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
know, it's not there's not bad intentions. There's just we need to be flexible in recognizing not everyone has access to the same digital quality, digital
Mm-hmm.
resources. They
Mm-hmm.
don't all have access to the quality learning environment, right? And
Yeah.
even in the
Mm-hmm.
United States, we know that too.
Yep.
But we're able
Yeah.
to not have to talk about it so much, right? Those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to
Mm-hmm.
basically bring those things out. And one of the ones that I see and that's really important is just this whole gender access that happens around the world. Is the idea of these patriarchal policies and practices in so many societies.
Mm-hmm.
And in the global south, this was not indigenous. There was much more egalitarian, more complementarity across genders in providing support for one's community until colonialism occurred. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's important that we start calling out some of these, what we can call them as structural inequities. We can call them
Mm-hmm.
lots of different things that whatever the words you want to use. But we need to call out these are real barriers. These are things that are happening and shouldn't be happening,
Mm-hmm.
and also weren't things that were ever a part of our cultural identity for so many places, right? So
Yeah.
we do need to start calling those things out as we think about the impact that all of that these inequities are having on women's health and well-being, but also for other youth in different low-income settings that are not getting access to these points, right?
Yeah.
We need to call out these things, just to call it out. Now we're going to overcome it. We're going to work around it. We're going to do
Mm-hmm.
something about it.
Yeah.
but let's not just assume everything's equal or that it's
Right.
based on merit, that anyone can be whoever they want to be. We know it just is not true. So,
Mhm.
but anyway, it just kind of keeps the battle going, if you will, in those senses. And we also don't want to make it sound like as we're coming up with solutions that these are simple things to do. It really is a community level conversation that has to happen. So,
Yeah.
we'll have examples down the road of some that have been able to do that in certain places.
Yeah.
But really excited to highlight Jean Bosco today and just that whole idea that there is hope out there. There are people who are doing amazing things. So let's elevate
Mhm.
them. Let's talk about them.
Yeah.
Let's bring their stories forward. So what today, in terms of the closing, what are some thoughts you both have around, just working with youth living in low income settings? Shay, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's really important to have identity based resources,
Yeah.
because when youth see their identity represented or their identity being quote unquote valued, right? That's really important. That goes such a long way in terms, especially in terms of career development and future readiness. Just because I think, like with financial or financial support, social networks with identity based things, combining both of those things is really important because they see themselves represented
Yeah.
and valued again. Yeah.
And I think, one of the things, and we do this in some of our activities, is having cultural pride,
Right. Exactly.
having a sense of just that, and the ability to then, and also not only cultural pride, but becoming aware of things that have impacted your culture,
Yeah.
right? The what are those inequities that are getting in
Right.
the way? One of my school counselors is from India, and is really interested in how the caste system
Yes.
has kind of an unconscious way of holding people back, or at least wondering how that impacts their aspirations. And so wanting to design an activity that is another cultural awareness
Yeah.
around what those inequities are about and how they impact us in our day-to-day space. Youth need those, and they love to,
For sure.
to really explore those. It gives meaning
Yeah.
and a sense of, oh, this is why it feels like that, or oh, this is what's happening. So I think you're absolutely right. Identity is the key piece.
Yeah.
And understanding one's cultural background, history, and then just the tremendous depth of resource support and everything that happens with one's culture, I think, is really critical. Yeah.
Mhm.
Annie, what do you got?
Well, one thing I think that always comes to my mind is the importance of supporting youth in their communities. And I think that probably comes from the work that we do, where we work with, like, in collaboration with so many different people to sort of problem solve within their communities.
Yep.
When it comes to youth, they live in these communities, they see the issues, they've probably talked about or dreamed about a solution. And so people, even if you're, an expert in your industry coming in from elsewhere, you may not necessarily see those things. Um, and you could be implementing something that, has worked in a similar setting, but there is still, I think, a level of responsiveness to that specific community and that specific group of people that can make any sort of, entrepreneurial or workforce development support more successful and just, um, I would say maybe almost like nicer, for the youth to take part in, when they feel like they have a say in it. And so
Exactly. Yeah.
just the importance and the value of supporting the youth and their visions to improve their communities is, I think, just so important and so impactful. And so, sort of as Trey was saying, like financial support, topic expertise, the adult in the room to allow them, to have the meeting. Um, I think those are all so important things, but just learn from the community and the youth, support them, and so many amazing things can come from that.
Yeah. And I think for those of us that are in the academic space,
Mm-hmm.
showing up and being present in those spaces,
Mm-hmm.
it speaks a lot to the respect we have for the community
Yeah.
when we're
Mm-hmm.
leaving our offices and going down. I know, Annie, you and I were just at
Mm-hmm.
Orchard Gardens School in
Mm-hmm.
Boston to meet with some
Yeah.
parents, right? And had a wonderful student there who was showing all the creative stuff they're doing in middle school,
Yeah.
right? And just how more real it feels when we can have a conversation with adults about what they're concerned with their children and what the different pathways and opportunities are,
Yeah.
sharing the innovations that are going on in their community that they may not be aware of, as the case of our teachers that weren't
Mm-hmm.
aware of the kind of MyCap work that's going on,
Mm-hmm.
but just trying
Yeah.
to be just positive, right? And just
Yeah.
being there. And so I think that there's a lot that we need. We need the whole community involved in this.
Right.
And we need to
Mm-hmm.
recognize that we need to help empower the spaces
Mm-hmm.
where you have dedicated and talented leaders that are working hard to make something happen, right?
Yeah.
That's I think
Mm-hmm.
for me, I think that's what we love about our center. But that's, as you all, as the both of you know, and the others we work with, that's kind of our guiding light, right?
Right.
Is
Mm-hmm.
that excitement to work with others and in service
Mm-hmm.
to the larger community.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is a little more happy than the OECD conversation we had last session. Hopefully, a
We
little
do
more,
like a little happy.
a little more positive, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, shall we get ready to close here?
Yep, sounds good. Well, thank you everyone for taking a moment for youth. To access resources from today's conversation, go to our Center for Future Readiness YouTube channel, where you will find links to these resources and many more. And coming soon, we will have a resource portal for many more open access resources.
So Annie, how much longer do we have to say coming soon?
I think probably another 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
We're getting very, 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 very close.
Mm-hmm.
There's just like 3 things left, I think.
That's that famous word, eminent, right? It's eminent.
Yes, eminent in at least 2 to 3 weeks.
They're laughing because my story on that was when I first started as a professor, my dean said that my new computer would be arriving soon. It was eminent. And then it was about 3 weeks later. So I realized, oh, eminent means about 3 to 4 weeks. So anyway, so we're within that eminent time zone. That's great.
We are finally months later. But we hope you'll join us here on Take a Moment as we continue to discuss future readiness and
Yeah.
wait for the portal to arrive.
All right. Okay. Well, at Wheelock College of Education and Human Development, we're still looking for undergrad and graduate students. Our applications are happening right now. We're in November, so we're talking, and applications are due between now and January. So love to get more school counselors out here. We'd love to have more career professionals. We should be opening next fall a master's degree in career counseling, as well as some advanced certifications for those that are already professionals and just want to have more in-depth knowledge about how to engage in a lot of things that we talk about on this podcast. So for now, goodbye from me, Scott Solberg.
Goodbye from me, Shreya Venkatesan.
And goodbye for me, Annie Bell.